Thank you, everyone, and welcome to a general session that we're having today regarding school safety plans in West Virginia. This will be from 1 to 2. We've got 3 different presenters or persons that you may ask questions of, and like I said, it's just a general session for informational purposes. Our first presenter today is the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, Rob Cunningham. He is a former West Virginia State Trooper, former ATF agent, and the current president of the Putnam County School Board. Mr. Cunningham, if you could please approach us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for having me. As the delegate said, I am current. How's that? Is that better? All right. As Delegate Summers said, I'm currently the Deputy Cabinet Secretary for Homeland Security. I bring with me 30 years of law enforcement experience, and also bring nearly a decade's worth of experience in the public schools as a board member. So I'm uniquely qualified, I believe, to at least offer my opinion, offer an assessment of where we are with school safety in this state. Currently, I was assigned May the 26th to start looking at this. The governor's office called up, and the Secretary Sandy advised me that what I should do is look at it, see if I could develop a best practices plan for the state of West Virginia. And in that time, I've contacted over 25 different agencies in this state, to include state and federal, fire departments, EMS, every stakeholder involved in public safety, and anyone that would be involved in a mass shooting response. I'm receiving great information. Matter of fact, I was at the hardware store Saturday, and I had a gentleman who approached me and wanted to talk to me about what we need to do about school safety. So I'm getting great input. At this point, I want you to know West Virginia does have a plan. We have we comply with what is in Chapter 18, the Department of Education. I've had a meeting with them. I've sat down. We've looked at what we have plan-wise. We meet all those requirements. We also, what I plan on doing is going beyond what's required by code and expanding it to a best practices, looking at what we need to do to make our schools safe, make our children safe. We can't fortify the schools to the point that they're all like Mount Olive, because that's not conducive to providing a quality education to our children. So we got to find that happy balance between the two, and that's my charge, and that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to research. I'm going to find out what has worked throughout the country. I've started reading the after action reports, starting with the Columbine shooting in 1999 up until the Parkland shooting and the Sandy Hook shooting. And there's a couple things that are glaring, that stick out. And number one, first and foremost, that 81% of the mass shooters have at least told one person prior to them committing the act. And of the mass shooters, at least 59% of them have told at least 2 people. To me, those are staggering numbers, because only 41% of those people contacted law enforcement. So school safety is not the principal's responsibility. It's not the police's responsibility. It's not the math teacher's responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. School safety is your next door neighbor's responsibility. It's your student's responsibility. It's everybody's involved. It's their responsibility. And the number one thing that I have seen so far that has led to these mass shootings has been human complacency. So we have got to address that. We've got to make people more accountable. And I've got some ideas about how we're going to do that. Number one, I want to start with a universal type app, where if there's a student that hears another student talking, they can get on the app and just report it. And that app, it would automatically go to our watch center. It would automatically go to our local law enforcement. It would automatically go to the Fusion Center, so we can immediately act. The systems we have now are good. I think they're mostly antiquated because they're telephone calls. And society today, the youth of today, they don't make telephone calls. I have 3 children. 2 of them are still in public schools. They communicate via text and Snapchat, for heaven's sakes. They don't pick up the telephone and call people. They don't have face-to-face communication. And if we want them to be involved in making sure their school's safe, we need to have an avenue for them to be able to report the information without it being cumbersome or being an issue that they don't feel comfortable using. I think that app, I've already started the process trying to develop, I shouldn't say develop, talking to the people who will develop the software so we can have that available to all of our citizens. And I don't want it just narrowed to our school system. I want everyone to be able to have it. So if you drive past the school and you see the back gate open, you can get on your app and say, hey, the back gate's open. Well, that will hold the administrators responsible for making sure that their school is locked down when it needs to be locked down. So I'm coming up with some good ideas. I want you to know that I've been working on it pretty much endlessly since the 26th of May. I'm getting great input. I'm looking forward to some of your questions so I can have more input to be able to kind of steer the ship to where we need to be. I do want to caution you that we don't need to make a knee-jerk reaction to do one thing or the other. We need to make the best decision possible. We need to evaluate it and make the best decision possible with how to address this problem. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary. Next, we have Jonah Adkins, who's the coordinator of the Office of Accountability for the West Virginia Department of Education.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Delegate Summers. Just want to touch a little bit on what Deputy Cunningham had stated. We've had always had a great partnership between the Department of Education and the Department of Homeland Security. We've had consistent collaboration. And we look at things through the education lens. They own more of the tactical knowledge of what to do in this type of situation, that type of situation. So we're continually working to connect counties with the agencies involved, with DHS, so that they can provide some of that information, because those are some of the requests, some of the questions that we've had from counties. What should we do in this situation? What should we do in that situation? So always try to refer them to the Department of Homeland Security. A couple of handouts I believe that you may have had on your desk outlining some things that we do from the department side. One of the first things that we do is we have the crisis response plan, which is required in West Virginia Code 18-9F9. Each school is required annually to create a crisis response plan, outlines who was part of that planning team, who is responsible in the event of an emergency, and then specific instructions depending on the type of emergency, whether that would be an active shooter or a medical emergency or a weather-related emergency. They are to have specific plans or specific steps for each one of those emergencies. It includes people who are responsible for getting appropriate medications for students if needed, who is responsible for evacuating those with special needs if necessary. One of the things that we are doing to strengthen that is we are adding the submission of that crisis response plan to the accountability system. So if counties are not, if they're not dutiful in submitting that plan in a timely manner, then that will reflect negatively in their annual accreditation scorecard. We additionally have an online toolkit that is available as schools sit down and they begin to create their plans. That is available on the Department of Education website. It provides resources, provides threat assessments that they can use to address any concerns that they may have with a student regarding any tendencies to violence. We have a link, or the number rather, posted to the Safe Schools helpline, as Mr. Cunningham mentioned. We have training resources, and as always, we provide training in person to counties and schools based on their requests. One of the, going back to the threat assessments, one of the things that we really want to focus on is kind of being proactive. Obviously, we have to plan, and any time that I go out and provide this training to counties, I ensure that they understand beyond the plan, you have to practice. Plans are great, but if you don't do anything with that plan, if you don't practice what you have put in that plan, it's not going to do you any good. So, but we want to take that proactive approach in that we have the One Caring Adult initiative that we've started at the department here the past couple of years, and that is just a focus on ensuring that each student is connected to at least one caring adult in the building. Maybe a teacher, maybe a custodian, maybe a bus driver, whatever. Each student needs to be connected to at least one caring adult. Because unfortunately, bad things do happen in our society. Students are enduring a lot of trauma. They have a lot of things going on in their lives, and they may not have that mom or dad at home that they can go and talk to. So they need someone available that they can have an outlet with, and that person will be able to connect them to the appropriate resources that they may need to get through that time. In the Office of Federal Programs, we have the Office of Student Support and Wellbeing, and in that office we have behavior interventionists, school counseling, school psychology, school nurses, school social workers, communities in schools. I can't say enough good about the Communities in Schools program and how that those communities and school social workers out in our schools have done a fantastic job of connecting kids to the resources that they need. We have attendance directors, community and family partners, so getting all of those wraparound services so that we can ensure that we are focusing on the whole child. And again, we've recently had meetings with Deputy Cunningham and his staff. We have meetings scheduled in the future that we will continue to collaborate so that we can, we can bring the education side and we can kind of bring the tactical side together so that we can provide the best possible training or supports for schools as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Adkins. Our third presenter today is Mr. David Roach, who's the Executive Director of the SBA, and he's going to talk to us about opportunities for school safety improvements.
Thank you, Majority Leader Summers. Delegates, I'd like to start off with a little bit of a history and bring us up to date as far as the SBA contributions. We had the School Safety Act in 2007. At that time, it was a requirement for the SBA to implement guidelines for safe schools, plans. We were given to distribute to the counties $30 million that were spread over 3 years with 10 million installments. Then we also received from Patriot Services approximately 1.5 million, and that was used for the counties to develop the threat assessment or vulnerability, whatever you would call it, but they did an assessment. It is the intent at that time to empower the school building authority to facilitate and to enhance school access safety and provide and secure ingress and egress from school facilities. That is our main thrust. Then also the code required, we developed a legislative rule. We adopted policy to comply with Title 164, and we developed the SBA Policy and Procedures Handbook. And if you have your handout with you, that hopefully you have with you, this document, Attachment A, identifies the school design elements that are incorporated in the SBA quality and performance standards. And it shall include in all new schools that are constructed with SBA funds. If you could look at the document for a minute, please, and go to the fourth to last page of that document. I will go over with some pictures to show you what we are doing. On Section 3, on a typical design criteria, site design, note 18. Bollards sufficient enough to stop a passenger vehicle traveling at 25 miles per hour shall be installed at all entrances accessible by vehicular traffic. Bollards shall be spaced in a manner necessary to prevent vehicular entrance to the facility, but yet provide adequate space for occupants to exit. You see those, that's all new schools have those that are built with SBA funds. The next picture illustrates Section 3 on a typical design criteria, note 4, 8, and 9, and 10. On 4, design professionals shall incorporate design elements in accordance with the school access safety plan, elements of the crime prevention through environmental design, again through the code. Concepts shall be incorporated where risk and vulnerability assessments are conducted and incorporated in the recommendations in the design. And the picture shows that at that time we had outside access doors all labeled, either on the door or on the building. They were numbered. And that would enhance security coming, the sheriff's department, fire department, to know where everything is and where to go in. The next page also shows the administrative office. And what it is we call those traps, and that helps us to isolate visitors where they can't enter the main building. These are examples of what occurs. The picture on the left is what we do in our designs and are required our architects to come up with. The examples below the picture, but still at the top, those are retrofits for buildings or not our new buildings. They're renovations to existing buildings. In picture 10, you see the doors where they will automatically shut with a button pushed by the main office or by the fire alarm itself going off. They automatically close. This prevents the intruder not to proceed any farther. They can come back out, but they can't continue down the hallway. They are trapped. And it automatically, which I'll share with you in a minute, the teachers' doors usually are automatically shut, or not automatically shut, but they're already locked, and the teacher just gets up and shuts the door if they're open, or they're already shut. That's usually depending on the administrator or the superintendent or the board policies. The next page illustrates the technology outside with the cameras. They're called A-call, is that referred to? A-phone, that are outside the entrances where you identify yourself. They can buzz you in, and they have cameras for those entrances. The next, on 9, it shows the safety glass that's required in our procedures now for our designs. So all safety glass is present there. All our windows are numbered. So if you have a teacher's door that says, we know the intruder is in room 25, they're notified of that. On the outside of the building, the classroom windows are numbered. so the folks know from the outside exactly the room the intruder would be in. In the process of revamping or redoing from what I shared with you, we started in 2008. In 2011, meeting with other agencies and collaborating with the schools. And when I say other agencies, particularly the State Board of Education and Homeland Security, additional safety design elements were added. Those were bollards at the entrance accessible by vehicular traffic, cafeteria and commons separated from the main office by mechanically operated security system and school access, numbering of the doors and windows, security glazing, and panic exiting devices on egress doors. All our doors that's not a main egress do not have any hardware on the outside. You can't enter the door. You can only leave or exit the building as the fire marshal would require. But no intruder or outsider can get in except through those main occurrences or entrances that are deemed necessary. I would also like to add that we have approximately 674 schools, counting our multi-county technical centers and a school of deaf and blind. We have 674 schools with safe school entrances. We have 346, 328 are without. We've approximated, talking with architects and price escalation, it is approximately on average of $500,000 per entrance to renovate existing schools, and that would require $164 million to accomplish that all schools have safe school entrances. Since the time of the initial requirement that you dedicated the $30 million for, and through our what we call our needs grant, our major new buildings and renovations, and our MIP, which is major improvement, we have 70 new schools that have safe school entrances and 24 renovations with the retrofit. And that's where I am. I have a whole list, if you're interested or ask me, 2 pages of things that schools do automatically to enhance the facility that you may not be aware of. Some of these I wasn't aware of. I gathered these from all superintendents of all the counties, and I'm going to submit the list back to them tomorrow of every county. It's just a master list. So if there's things that they could do, that they would like to do, that they can kind of copy what another county is doing. That's it for my presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you so much. First, we're going to start with questions for Deputy Secretary Cunningham. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Do you mind coming to the mic? Delegate Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. It opens a lot of eyes and ears. On resource officers, do you have a count that you can publicly say on how many we've got and how many more we need in our school systems, and where are we severely lacking?
I'd feel comfortable saying we're about 25% of our schools have resource officers. Now, that takes into account a lot of our facilities have a middle school and a high school right next to each other, and there may be one resource officer there. So,
sure.
But roughly 25%. I had Department Administration pull the funding numbers from, they get grant money from 2 different sources, and it was $4.7 million that's been spent for resource officers since as far back as 2015.
Okay, and then the other question I had, there was some conversation that I heard the last couple of days about resource officers, and there was a question about being in uniform, being police car, and I know my superintendent's here, but I pass the Parkersburg High School every day going to work, and I am proud of the fact that the City of Police, Parkersburg City Police Unit is sitting in front of the school. And I know it's there, and I understand that I think he's in uniform in the school. Are we promoting uniformed resource officers so that the kids know who they are and the teachers are aware, or are we kind of in the casual undercover type situations? What's the thing that we think works best?
I don't know of an undercover type police officer setting. I know there's been some proposals from some counties. As an old uniformed trooper, I would tell you that just the mere presence of a uniform and the mere presence of a car is oftentimes a deterrent.
Okay, good enough. Thank you, sir.
Delegate Jennings.
My question is about this app, and are you afraid that it'll be misused? Especially when you took it over to the Fusion Center, and so then they can check back on open source on that person. You're not, do you feel that that could be abused then?
From a misuse from the community, is that what
Yes.
you're asking? I think it's along the same lines as people calling in a false police call. It would be along those same lines, because that's essentially what it is you are...
Okay, would there be repercussions on that? I mean, if a student said, well, I heard so-and-so said he was going to shoot the principal. So now then it goes to the Fusion Center. Now then it's going to be anything he's put on the internet, anything, it's all open to them, and they're going to look at that. Isn't that starting to get to the Big Brother thing?
The Fusion Center is not going to look at anything that there's not an open investigation.
Who has to open that?
Excuse me?
Who has to open that?
A law enforcement investigation. Delegate, one of the apps that I have on my phone today is from, as a special agent with ATF, it's a Hero 911 app. And what that does is that Hero 911 app notifies me anytime there's a mass shooting, there's some major event. The last one I got was in Maryland when the 3 people were shot by the person from West Virginia. So to answer your question, the Fusion Center doesn't initiate any of the query into anyone. They would, the school resource officer, the local police would notify them, hey, we've got a situation, and they send it to the Fusion Center, and they start absolutely looking at the target. If someone says they're going to shoot the principal, and then they've been on Facebook saying, I'm going to shoot the principal, I think that is a very good investigative tool.
I don't mind that as long as another student doesn't say, well, I heard him say this, and then it kicks that in. That's the problem. I don't want the brown shirts to start in this country, where kids are reporting on other kids, and I just wonder if you've thought this through to where that can't happen. So
I understand your concern. As I stated when I first got up here, I was just assigned May the 26th.
Oh, and this is just something, with your conversation, it just came to me and I was thinking, hey, let's look at this.
And I can tell you in my 30-year law enforcement career, especially the last 21 years as an ATF agent, I spent more time making sure someone could keep their gun rather than me taking their gun. And that was my responsibility as a federal law enforcement officer and and to abide by the Constitution.
And see that you just brought up another subject with red flag laws. If they're brought in, then this app could be connected. You know, I'm just afraid of how far this could go.
And you know, from the Homeland Security side, we don't create the red flag laws. That's a policy issue.
I know.
And you know, if the legislative body creates red flag laws, then we'll abide by red flag laws.
All right. Questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Queen.
Thank you, Madam Leader. Can you dive into the details on the funding for the resource officers? You said $4.6 million has been allocated since 2015. I know that's a grant program. Can you tell us, is it a certain amount per resource officer?
I overspoke. I've found it in my notes. It's almost 3.9 million.
Okay.
So I apologize. The two grants that are used in West Virginia through the Department of Administration is the Justice Assistance Grant and the Juvenile Justice Grant.
Can you tell us what those numbers are per resource officer?
I don't have it broke down like that. I can tell you the yearly, how much was spent each year. Like in 2021, the Justice Assistance Grant spent $645,000.
And I assume counties come to you and say, we can't afford it, correct?
Afford
putting a school resource officer in?
That's a common issue, and part of the problem with when you get a grant, a federal grant, to fund a resource officer, it roughly funds about a third of that officer's salary. And the federal grant mandates if you take a uniformed officer off the road to become a resource officer, you have to replace it. So essentially, if say it's a deputy sheriff, the county would have to pick up about 2/3 of the new hire's salary.
And I assume most counties just don't go through with hiring a resource officer. I mean, are these predominantly in larger counties versus rural counties? Is there any information?
I have not dove that deep into it. I know I was told this morning that there's a total of 33 resource officers in Wood County. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I was speaking to a gentleman and he told me that. So, you know, if there's 33 in one county and, you know, we've got 55 counties and about a quarter of the counties have resource officers, you know, it doesn't seem equitably split.
And these grants are all federal grants, correct?
Those two grants are, yes.
Do we have any state allocation?
I don't have any information on that. I can find out, though.
And are all those grants available for all three levels of schools?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if there's a distinction between elementary and high school.
So there's no requirement towards high schools over elementary schools?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I can find that out, though.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Leader.
Delegate Queen and to others, perhaps we can gather some more information on the police resource officers and send it out to everybody with all those kind of questions that you were asking. Delegate Hornbuckle, and then we will move to Mr. Adkins for question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here with us today.
Yes, sir.
and appreciate the work that you're doing in this space. And I do like the thought, at least the thought right now, of some type of app, albeit it needs to be tweaked probably. My question is, I don't think we need to have a knee-jerk reaction, but I think all of us in this body would agree we have to do something. And we're doing some measures to look at resource officers, which is good, and the construction of our buildings. But are you currently doing any research on maybe the commonalities or traits in some of these mass shooters? Example, not so sure, what the reason was in Texas. Albeit not a school shooting, but in Buffalo, obviously that was a white supremacist issue. And so I guess where I'm getting at, trying to look to the underlying issues, whether it be, again, mental illness, something else that's underneath there that we might be able to help our children with before it even gets to extra resource officers or, the construction of the school traps.
Yes, sir. I have touched on that. The FBI and the Secret Service and the United States Department of Homeland Security has all done studies, research on that. I could sit here and go down and read what it says, but essentially, if a family member has some sort of physical health issue, they say 54% of those mass shooters experienced that. If 11% of the mass shooters have been members of non-custodial parents, 83% of the school attackers threatened others, including the target and/or communicated the threat before the attack. There's a laundry list of them. The one absolute that they've all found is that 100% of the mass shooters have experienced at least one of the social risks, being they were bullied in school, they broke up with their girlfriend, they broke up with, they got a divorce, they don't have a mom or dad at home, or they don't have either at home. So those studies that I've read conclude that right there is the major 100% factor.
And I know there just has to be maybe, and I appreciate that, there's something else that's there. And, I appreciate my colleague from Preston County, because we do have to be aware of going too far. But also, if these shooters have been, let's say that 70% of shooters, they watched endlessly some crazy propaganda site, all right? Or I don't know what that might be. But again, just trying to look at why these things are occurring rather than being just, trying to arm ourselves.
One thing that was implemented actually in September of 2021 was when our school resource officers submit a request to the Fusion Center, said, hey, we've got a problem child. We've got someone who is showing indications that they might harm themselves or harm others. They have a form that they'd fill out. They would send it to the Fusion Center. What the Fusion Center does is they immediately contact the Department of Health and Human Resources. And DHHR has a program where I was actually surprised. They have a lot of youth programs for mental health. And they work their side from the Department of Homeland Security and the the Department of Health and Human Resources and the mental health aspect, while the Fusion Center is trying to figure out if this person has made any statements or has any plans, and then they come back and collectively they get together and they make a recommendation back to the school resource officer. This person is high risk, medium risk, or low risk. So I'm scheduled next week to meet with DHHR to dive into that a little deeper, but I hope that answered your question.
It was a good start, and I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Okay, questions for Mr. Adkins? Delegate Young.
Hello? Thank you, Madam Leader. My questions, I have 2 kids in elementary school, and I want to know, number one, how many incidents have there been in the past few years? I don't think we got those numbers. Any sort of incidents of calling someone saying there's going to be a shooting or guns being brought to school, anything like that? Any other weapons either? What are the numbers?
I don't currently have those numbers. I believe we could get with the Fusion Center to gather that data. They keep track of that data at the Fusion Center as those tips and calls typically go there.
Okay, and then I also know that my kids go through active shooter drills quite frequently at school, and they're 6 years old. What did teachers tell them?
That is a county by county. Counties have autonomy in determining what method that they will use during an active shooter, whether that be Alice, run, hide, fight. I think there's another one called alert. I believe Mr. Cunningham. And so counties, it's county by county decision as to what method that they use in the event that there would be an active shooter. So, and depending on what method your county, your home county has chosen, that would be what those teachers should be given instruction in.
Can you tell me what those I don't know what those things are.
Okay, so ALICE, I believe the acronym stands for Alert, Lockdown, Isolate, Counter, and Escape. So that, that method is, you want to let everyone know, and I'm not an expert, so I'm just giving you my interpretation. Let the school know what's going on, lock everyone down, secure the entrances to the classrooms, blockade, barricade those doors, get the students away from the door, to prevent anyone making entry into the classroom. If they do make entry into the classroom, then you want to counter that attacker with whatever means you have necessary. If that's a textbook, if that's a desk, a stapler, it doesn't matter, and then evacuate when possible. The run, hide, fight is kind of similar. Mr. Cunningham, can you explain that one in any more detail than I can? It's kind of self-explanatory, and then the alert. Do you know anything about the alert procedures? Okay, run, hide, fight is okay in Putnam County, correct? Okay.
Okay, so do we tell the kindergartners, this is in case someone brings a gun to school to kill you? Is that, we say that to kindergartners?
Again, that would be based on the county's directive. I'm not sure what your school safety director in your county has instructed teachers to do. Again, that would be a local level decision.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Delegate Farrell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My question would be, and I know I spoke with Mr. Montgomery last week, outside session, about the problem with communication whenever an incident like this would go down, being able to communicate with somebody on the inside of school. And I think probably if we look at most every school shooting that's happened since Columbine, it's been somebody or a student on the inside of the school with a cell phone that was communicating with authorities on the outside. Is that correct? Would you agree with that?
I don't have enough knowledge of that to agree or disagree. I apologize.
Okay. Well, assuming that that's the case, but that would be there. Are you aware of what the situation is with cell phone coverage inside of our schools?
That is as far as I know, that is a county by county basis, and the only reason I know this is I just read an article regarding a county the other day, and it was the board was discussing whether teachers would be able to put their personal devices on the school network. That came up in a local board discussion, and so counties do have some autonomy on whether or not they allow personal devices to be added to the network in the event that there's not already cell coverage in the area.
Right. I can say from my personal experience, you can go over here at Capitol High School, almost the entire campus is almost a complete dead zone to cell phone coverage. In my home district at Sissonville, it's sketchy at best. A school I taught at here in Kanawha County, South Charleston High School put a booster in the building, and you're able to get in, so that the coverage is good there. So for a nominal fee, they could put these boosters in the building and allow coverage throughout any classroom a teacher or student may be trapped in or whatever and be able to communicate with outside. Is that something that has been considered or looked at?
That would come from Tim Conzet's office. He is our officer of technology and data management at the department, and we haven't looked at that, but we can definitely check into that.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it if you would. I think that's something that's a nominal fee that we could do because communication is key in these situations, and because of the nature of the way a building is constructed, as the gentleman from SBA spoke, it's brick and mortar, and they're designed to be fireproof, but they're also signal proof when it comes to getting outside communication.
Correct.
Thank you.
Delegate Rowe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And if some of those papers that they were talking about earlier could be available to us, I would appreciate being able to have access to them.
Do you mean the handouts?
No, it was there was a reference to 2 pages, a list of schools and the status of their safety, and I would be happy to see that. If it's a secret document, then
Okay.
it's in there. I didn't see it. I'm sorry. It's not on the back of mine. No. Okay. Thank you. Some questions of the gentleman. I'm wondering, does your agency or any of the other 2 agencies represented here have a full-time school security expert on staff?
I handle school safety at the department. Each county has, some have full-time dedicated solely to school safety. Some are, it's an additional duty that they have as a director at the county office. We do have folks at the Fusion Center that monitor the Safe Schools Helpline 24/7. We have a couple of gentlemen, I believe, that kind of, and I'm not sure their official titles, thinking of Sean and Tony, who handle the school safety side of things from Homeland Security, correct? Infrastructure.
So this is all that you do is school security?
It is not. It's not the only thing that I do. We do education accountability, district and school accountability as well.
Do you think it would be beneficial if at least one of the 3 agencies had a full-time school security expert on staff? Would that be helpful, perhaps?
Yes. I can't say no to that.
Okay, and that's a good answer. I'm sorry. But it just seems to me that this has become so important that we may want to have somebody who wakes up in the morning, has coffee with school safety on their mind, and who finishes at the day in the same way, but because it seems to be a changing platform. But anyway, I'd like to ask about funding. Now, I'm not sure that I got the numbers right. Something like $164 million to bring all of the school entries up to safe?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, in the world of our budgeting, we can afford $164 million if it would save a school shooting, I think. And I'm wondering if there's been any discussions at least among the agencies, of presenting to the governor a proposal to fund whatever is necessary to make safe entries in all the schools in the state.
We actually submit a survey.
Can you identify yourself for everyone?
Drew McClanahan, I'm Director of Government Relations for the West Virginia Department of Education. We do actually submit a survey every year to all of our district superintendents on the status of school safety. I'm happy to make sure that all the members have that report again. We did submit it to education committees this previous legislative session, and it does have an update as far as what each district feels as though they need and where they are with the status of things like safe entryways, resource officers, et cetera. So I'm certainly happy to make sure that everyone has a copy of that report again.
Well, the survey is one thing, but I'm talking about if we're told that it takes $164 million, about $500,000 per school entry, to make all the schools safe in West Virginia. I'm just wondering if there's a plan to come up with the funding necessary to do that, whether or not the school may have, or the county may have that on the top of their list. I'm just thinking that the school building authority is really expert at this, and that's who gave us the numbers.
Yes, sir. And as a part of that survey is actually required by code as well, and a part of that there is an allocation request that goes along with that. And so again, I'm happy to make sure that all of that information is shared back out with the members.
Now, is that an allocation request that the Department of Education would make to the governor and then have the governor present in his bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you know, is there any plan to look at that, or?
I'll have to go back and see if there was anything that was appropriated from this last year in that fund. But again, that's something we're required each year to do, and so I believe that there was an allocation request this past year, but we'll have to go back and make sure of that.
well, a supplemental, if we go back into session, would be available as well, correct?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Tully, and then because it's 5 of 2, we'll take questions for the SBA.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader, and thank you for being here with us. It seems to me that sometimes when you do crisis response drills, it seems to be the practice of having agencies work together makes those drills a little bit more successful because people are prepared and they kind of have some reasonable level of expectation of what to do. Can you tell me from the state school board or state Department of Education standpoint how much the local, county, and state police agencies, EMS, fire departments, aeromedical transport, and hospitals are involved in your crisis response plans for your schools?
They are listed as far as the team members. They are invited, and then we encourage them to invite representatives from all of those agencies to be part of the plan. In addition, 189F9 was updated, I believe, a couple of years ago to include that all first responders and the corresponding county will get a copy of that crisis response plan once the school completes that. Not only is the county required to submit that to Homeland Security's database, but they're also required to submit that to all of their local first responders. As far as individual participation, I don't have numbers as to who has participated. The conversation is there, the invitation is there, but I'm not sure how many agencies have responded.
I would like to see a lot more participation and maybe even some active drilling to facilitate some of those things, because I think people that are prepared and know what to do, sometimes they do have a better response, and if God forbid something happened, that they may have a better chance of survivability from something like this. The other question I have is as far as examination of mental health crisis response teams within our school systems. What is being done? Are we looking at any of the expulsions? Is there any early warning systems that we're looking at? Are we looking at maybe access through pediatric or adolescent mental health via telehealth, now that that is a possibility for some of the rural areas?
So we do have, as I mentioned, the Office of Student Support and Wellbeing, the Communities and Schools Initiative, as well as another layer that we have added. As far as those mental health services, I'm not sure where we stand as far as the accessibility to mental health services in our schools. I do know some schools have some clinics, and they do have some telehealth availability, but statewide, I don't know. I couldn't give you a percentage on how many counties have that availability. As far as looking at data, as it relates to early identification, we do have data sources that is available to principals, counselors, schools that give us indicators of where students are academically and behaviorally, that they can access that data at any time to kind of create cohorts, if you will, so that they can kind of monitor those students.
I don't know if you're aware, I know that the Rural Health Association is also expanding some access to rural mental health for students in some of the more rural counties via telehealth, so that may be another potential partner that these schools would like to look at.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, questions for Mr. Price? Is he going to get off easy? Okay. Who? Roach. Oh, Roach, I'm sorry. Roach.
No question.
Delegate Boggs.
Thank you, Madam Leader. David, good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
When you were talking about the entrances and the 500,000, that doesn't include any exterior doors. That's just, for instance, the main entrance that you would funnel everyone through.
Correct.
Is that correct? On these side doors that are the numbering and that type thing, I know over the years that I've witnessed, as way back as a student, and then over the years, you see them propped open with a rock, a piece of wood, anything. Is there any way, I'm sure there is a way, but it seems like one of the security measures that needs to be taken place as well is some type of a definitive door ajar type light or something that lights up in the office so someone knows that that door is not latched, because that seems to be one of the biggest security lapses as far as somebody obtaining entrance, and I just wondered, do you have any kind of a price on that, or is that anything that's been required in any of the construction?
No, sir, but there are counties in my master list that I created from the information from all the counties, that there are counties that do that any door that is ajar is a warning light if it's left open. I don't know if that's for 10 seconds, 3 seconds, but I can find more information about that and get back with you.
I appreciate it. I think that would be very, very helpful. I think that's one of the biggest possible breaches of security that we can have in schools. And the other, I just want to follow up with the gentleman from, well, both the gentlemen from Kanawha County, but especially the part about the cell phone coverage. Living in a rural area and then inside of a school building, very, very difficult to get a signal sometimes. And while I know we don't want students to use their cell phones, I think in this day and time we've got to recognize that there are instances where they could be a lifesaver.
I would like to add, sir, a correction that for all our new schools, we have those systems in place for those doors.
Very good. And I guess it would just depend on the school and the type of construction. To be retrofit is what a price would be.
Yes, that's what I would have to find out.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Being that it's 2 o'clock, we'll conclude our meeting today. But thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you for your presentations. We appreciate it.